Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host. I'm sure you've seen me many times over, but guess what? Boy, I tell you, we're coming into the point where we're coming at the home run. And we're getting at this whole political issue, the election. I've got two ballots that are sitting in my hand, one for the wife and one for myself. She pretty well tells me what to do, but the only thing I've done is I've been interviewing for the last few days or whatever, trying to get the candidates to talk about what the issues are. And folks, you know that's all about. And then naturally, the issues and the candidates are all discussed here within your voters pamphlets. Make sure you look at this. You can look at that. Also, you can also look at some of the shows that I've done already with some of the interviews we've done. But this is what we're going to be doing for the next two shows, basically for the next 2 weeks. This particular show, I've invited two folks that will kind of give us an overview. There's two folks that are just basically just individuals. They're going to be voting, one vote, one person, as you know. And we're going to just be talking about interests. I've got a gentleman that's going to be talking. He's here from the Portland area, and he lives on the island, and in Jansen Beach. And I thought he was a very interesting guy. He has a good background. I've known him for a number of years because I happen to live in the same area that he is, so he's a neighbor. Okay, and the other person is a female mother. And she happens to be of kin, if you will, to another individual you recognize of late. And I'm talking about a gentleman by the name of George Cirillo. And she's going to be the second guest. And then you have the women's view. And my purpose for doing that is saying that is that, as you know, I've always made a statement here, whenever it came up with the whole issue of women issues, that it's a women's voice, it's a women's issue. So now that we've got a big issue here that's going to be in the campaign across the board, that you guys are going to have to be talking about the whole issue of the abortion aspect of it. I mean, that's right up front with it. And I've always made the statement that's a woman's issue. And that's basically where it's going to be. And so if she wants to share her thoughts about that piece, she'll have the opportunity to do so. I mean, it's a divided situation, but hey, it's a women's issue, and I'll just leave it that way. Okay, got me. So we're gonna basically interview these two people on the first hour. The second hour, gentleman George is going to be he ran for governor. We're going to have three people who ran for governor on the next week. Three people running for three guys. George, he ran for governor. He happened to be a Latino. You know John Sweeney. He ran for governor. He's a white male. And you know myself, who I ran for governor when Vic Attia ran for governor years back in '84. And so consequently, we're going to be talking about everything around the state, around the city, like the city of Portland. Because as you note, the city of Portland, it's kind of like the living room, if you will, of the state of Oregon, and it's the entree piece. So it's a very important piece, and it's major here as far as the election that we're here today. So that's going to be the format of the show, the two shows, like I indicated before. And we're going to be doing these now, and then the second show will be next week, and we'll cap it up. And hopefully you will vote. You have to vote. Make sure if you want to get together with your neighbors, you guys can have discussions about this, that, and the other, but do vote. Very important. So let's get right into our vote. And by the way, we just happen to have a little nice situation again too. Someone's going to be doing a little singing for us today. The gentleman's going to sing, and he's from South Africa. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I really got excited about the guy. I didn't know he was going to do a Marvin Gaye or anything like that, but he said he said he can sing. I've not heard him sing, but I think it's going to be kind of neat. Kind of breaks it up a little bit. We're pretty well done with the elections. I've got all the paperwork. There is, and there's all these pamphlets and all this other stuff that I have here on the table. We've got a whole bunch of this stuff too. And this is all, everybody's trying to buy the seat. But hey, that's what it's all about. But read this for sure. Okay, good. All right. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you, Bruce.
Sorry to pull you away from the wife and all the things that you normally do on the
That's
weekend,
all
right?
right.
You got
That's
me?
all right. It's important.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that, buddy, very much. I appreciate you doing that. So why don't we just you're listed as a concerned citizen. You're very concerned, and you're very familiar with what the issues are and this, that, and the other, or whatever. So what do you think? I mean, you're going in this election. What do you think about it?
Well, the overall view that I hold is that change needs to occur.
Good.
I believe what's been going on and what continues to occur as far as leadership or lack thereof um, needs to take a divergent change.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that's the big picture.
Yeah.
There's obviously other issues and other concerns that I hold, but I'm going to be supporting and voting for change
Hmm. Hmm.
in the direction of not only the island, North Portland, but as well Oregon.
Yeah.
So,
That's a good point that you make because, as you know, we've got three women running for governor. That's historic in itself. And there's a lot of focus on that from a national standpoint. We got all kinds of people. It's almost like when the riots started about 2 terms ago with the wheel aspect of it. We had a whole bunch of people coming in and focusing on Portland. It became the national aspect of it. And so now here we are. We got the three women running, and everybody's excited about the whole piece. And so each have their respective platforms, right, and issue. And even I personally got involved in the issue to a certain degree, and I've examined those folks along that particular line, but it's good. Now, what do you think about some of the issues that were being raised by some of that you might have heard of the three women that are running?
well, I mean, as you know, there's not a lack of political campaign ads on the
Right,
television,
right.
right? So I not only have listened to the ads, I've looked through the book, and I've had some personal experiences with several of the candidates who are running for the
Okay.
governorship. And
You want to share
so
that with us?
yeah,
If you
sure.
okay?
I'm actually just to give a little background.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
am visually impaired. I was
Okay.
born. I'm a lifelong Oregon resident, visually impaired, and so I work with the Oregon Commission for the Blind as an advocate for persons who are visually impaired
Good.
and blind.
Good.
In that, in those workings, I have come occasion through my advocacy to be in contact with Speaker of the House Tina Kotek's office over the last 5 or 6 years, and I can just share with you it's been very disheartening. Bringing issues, legitimate issues, to the table, trying to seek the advocacy of my representative. I live on the island.
Mm-hmm.
Just been it's been a sad state of affairs. I'll
Yes.
say it to that. And so also I've worked with at that time Senator Betsy Johnson's office on some issues too. But I have not met Christine Dresden, but I certainly support what I've studied, what I've seen, what she stands for. I believe that we need to take more ownership and responsibility, and drive that direction forward. One of the things that I've noticed is Tina seems to talk about making change. Well, she's been part of the problem, in
Yeah.
my opinion. She's been the Speaker of the House and been a big part of the leadership there. I mean, you know how that works.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of mind-boggling to hear how she's going to push for change and make all these things happen that she's been, in my opinion, part of the blame of. And so, she won't have my support. And you know, I believe in trying to find. I know it's not an easy fix,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, but doing the same old thing
Yeah.
is not
Right.
going to get us
Right.
anywhere. So.
Right. 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 On that particular note, I too got sort of heavily involved with reference to the three women that are running, because these are dire times right now. It's some very stressful situations right now, and issues are very, very pronounced. And I've been involved in politics for a number of years, and basically running for office, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I too know the three women, if you will. And I was looking for their platforms. And and if you notice, I was in one of the ads, Christina.
Yes, I did.
And in all due respect, normally I wouldn't normally do that,
Hmm.
but there were some things that were missing with the ones that were being profiled most. And one family, I was very interested in the fact that Christina identified more with family than the other two aspect of it. That was major. The other thing is that she was rural, and naturally everything has been focused on the urban area, Portland metropolitan area, and too often that's about 80 or 90% of our state. And I thought there was a need of change from that particular aspect, very, very important. And the other thing is that when I ran for the county chair the last time around, Wapato was very, very important to the citizens of Portland and the state for that matter, because uh, being able to deal with the whole issue of the mentally ill was a key point for me meaning that we used to have a facility up in the Beaverton metropolitan area called Damage. It was a large facility, and they tore that down. The developers tore that down, and so consequently there was a focus from a number of the residents and that were interested in possibly getting Wapato. That was a facility that had been built, and politically it never got off the ground way back when, so to speak. But it was a beautiful facility, one that would have been perfect for a mental institution service kind of a deal outside of the city, not downtown and things of that nature. And so, in fact, that's one of the reasons why I ran for office, just to try to get that point across. But unfortunately, politics got in, and then they sold the building. Sold the building to another developer by the name of Schnitzer. And, the taxpayers lost quite a bit, because that was about $100 million building. And we sold it for $5 million, and still irritant. And so consequently, that was fine. But then on the other hand, and I'm telling this story because it's a very important one. A woman by the name of Kate Turan, who basically is the executive director of Volunteers of America, who had a good background on the whole issue of mental illness and whatever as far as the operation was concerned. And so I thought maybe it would have been a neat deal for the county to keep the building and actually give them the contract, if you will. And they would have facilitated immediately the whole issue of mental illness here within our community, and hope to resolve some of the problems that we're still faced with today. And folks, and so I still tell them that they were not responding to that piece. And but I did see that Christina would be a better person because of the rural nature of it, kind of like a fix, if you will.
Sure.
And so that was another piece. The other thing is that veterans weren't recognized. And I was looking
Well,
at
that's a shame.
the veterans weren't recognized, and so consequently I approached them. In fact, it just so happened I met that veteran component, and reached out to George, who was running for governor, and he was a Marine, former Marine, and as a result of that, I basically asked whether or not I might consider identifying with her, and that was great. And then I was invited, and as a result of that, I had my uniform on, and so and the other thing was that I didn't see the senior citizen aspect of it with the candidates, and with Christina was. And I went to an event the other day, and I noticed that there were a number of seniors that were there, but at the same time, I'm a senior too. But I'm also a veteran
And a Marine.
and a Marine, and I happen to be an African American, but again, I'm an American aspect of it. And I just liked her style in terms of how she dealt with that. And also the whole issue of the Latina community, that we still have an issue that folks are trying to assimilate, and I like the idea that they're very progressive, the Latinos, and again that's why I'm kind of associated with George, and we've kind of come up with a black and brown kind of thing, and it's a little idea, but the fact of the matter is George falls in that same category from the standpoint of being more progressive, American type of team, and so. I saw that with Christine.
Sure.
Naturally, there are some issues there that I might have had a little concern about, but But in politics, that's the other political side. You don't have to buy all of that, but that's just the way that lay out. A lot of times they try to make it somewhat financial, and but I didn't look that way. We would probably spend about $50 million or so
Sure.
for that whole, for all three of them, for that matter. But that's another reason why I think that Christina might do a better job for change,
Sure.
and that's a very important piece. So,
Well, Bruce, some of the things that I've heard her say through this campaign is let's make sure that our state governments and the leaders in there are doing the right job. Let's not just hand off the baton and have bad behavior continue. Getting businesses going again. Being hard on crime. Those are the things I think. Particularly in our area that we
right,
lived,
exactly,
representative area, have really fallen by the wayside.
exactly.
I also have a small business. I'm a business person, and I just get so saddened when I go downtown Portland and look at the boarded up buildings
Yes,
and what is being done about it, and just the homelessness everywhere, and the buildings
yes.
closing down. I mean, it's
Yes,
just
yes.
yeah,
Well, that's a very important. I'm glad you brought that point up too. I might share that again too. That was another major concern that I had. Because too often we tend to elect folks who don't have a resume. They don't have the background, and it's just political. So consequently, an outsider runs the seat. And then, don't get me wrong. Anybody can, especially in our country, anybody can run for office. But the bottom line is that when you run for those kinds of offices, you have to have some sort of a experience, if you will, a resume that you've done something, whatever. And that's kind of like where we've been kind of like setting up within the last two, let's say the last two administrations, around mayoral kind of deal. But that's a structure. It's like being military. There's a commanding officer, and in all due respect, Wheeler was a pretty good guy, but in all due respect, the elements that he represented basically was buying the seat. And if you do it that way, then it's an OJT process, on the job training,
sure,
and we cannot afford that kind of a mindset, especially in the mind we have in our progressive kind of a deal. So I agree with you on that particular line. I think that had a lot to do with it. And now, let's say he might have learned something, but it's just too late. We need change. We need change, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another reason why the Christina piece. She brings change. She hasn't been a politician for the last maybe 2 decades, like the other two individuals are. And then same thing with Betsy, like you said, just bring it right back. I still know Betsy, and I know she's a very strong woman, a very successful woman aspect of it. But the fact of the matter is that she was a longtime Democrat, conservative Democrat, and as far as I'm concerned, that if she wanted to get into that conservative, she should have went on and basically ran as a Republican. Then it'd been a different ballgame, maybe.
sure.
Got me. But the bottom line is that that's where the ball ran. So that's another reason why Christina, to me, I think makes a lot of sense, and I think it would be good for Portland. It would be good for because then there would be a fresher look aspect of it. Because the other area that I was concerned with was the whole issue with home ownership. There's a difference between home ownership and shelter. The folks are now that we're having to deal with as far as the homeless aspect of it. It shouldn't be called homeless. It should be shelterless. See, find a place, to basically be able to vet these individuals out, vet everybody out for that matter, and then determine just what their needs are. Got me? And to provide them shelter on a short-term basis aspect of it. But we've gone too far in that arena now. Now we're talking about building houses later on in home ownership. That's the wrong direction.
Seems to be a lot of talk and not much action, unfortunately.
You're
So
right. You're
yeah,
right. And so that's why I agree with you about the change aspect of it. And I think that she basically, Christina, brings the definition of change with reality, as opposed to somebody just basically talking about the aspect of it. Now, the other thing I was going to share with you is that this piece about where we live. We live on the island aspect of it, and it's kind of like the gateway from the state of Washington for
sure.
a lot of the homeless issues that we have. So the bottom line, we have our issues of crime and public safety, if you will, right? And it's an issue. What do you think about that?
Well, I've lived in the community not as long as you have, but I've lived on the island for about 13 years. My wife and I, and used to be a much different, kinder, gentler island. You know, I felt safe walking to the restaurants when they were actually
Right.
open. You know, but I don't feel that way anymore. I don't feel safe. I hate to admit that I don't feel, you know, I'm scared walking around
Right.
the
Exactly.
neighborhood with
Right.
my dog. And, you know, the buildings have closed down. Cracker Barrel's closed down. Stanford's has closed down.
Mm-hmm.
The people that I know and I talk to regularly say that they're just holding on by the skin of their teeth. So to see the dangerous people walking around the neighborhood and to see those buildings closing down, that just, you know, invites people to come, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
transient people to come and, you know, there's it's just a shame, you
Yes, it
know.
is.
Not only does it devaluate living conditions, but, you know, also the cost of homes
Yeah. Oh,
and, you know, the value of homes.
yeah.
And so, yeah, it's been, it's been a bad thing. So, but,
Well, I ditto everything that you said, but in addition to that, is that again, same situation. I reached out to the three women to see whether or not they could come and listen to what you had to say, and other neighbors like yourself and myself, for that matter. But unfortunately, they didn't respond, other than one. That was Christina. And what I mean by that, we wanted someone to physically come and talk about this piece. Well, she's going to be visiting the area, and I thought that was kind of neat to kind of look at what's going on
sure.
and identify with the people. I mean, on the ground.
Well, she must care,
Yeah,
right?
very,
So,
that's very much so, and I saw that sitting in this piece, and so and the fact that again one of the previous gubernatorial candidates, George, who ran for office, he's kind of an on the ground kind of a guy and very much involved, and so consequently that reflects aspect of it. So expect to see her coming to the area, hearing, maybe even chatting with you about that piece aspect of it. So that's another differentiation between the other two. Did not respond. They did not respond, and they need to get out and around. As far as I'm concerned, they need to go out and visit those camps. I mean, that's really what we're talking about doing, because they're still human beings. People are having some hard times. I mean, it's getting down to be almost getting to the point where we're going in the direction of the caste system. You know, rich and poor. We have a middle class aspect of it, but a lot of people are out there in a homeless kind of a situation because they can't make those bills. Everything's going up, and no one has a solution. And again, change. We need to change. We got to get someone at the table that understands that well enough to be able to deal with it. We got we got a number of billionaires. We got millionaires. But what happened to the little common situation where a person raising a family, modest income aspect of it? That's my point.
yeah,
Education,
yeah,
kids are getting to school,
yeah.
we don't have that.
You know, my grandma used a term calling it a fizzle, a failure, and a flop, and
Yes.
that's what I see the leadership in the last you know, recent years
Oh,
has.
very much so. I mean, well, even that, like you said, Tina's, as you know, she's our legislator.
Yes, I
Yeah,
do know
she's our
that.
legislator, but she's been chair. And hey, I take my hat off of that piece. But she still had an address.
Sure.
It was here in the Portland area, here, this district that we were talking about, and so I was sort of watching her in regards as she was running for governor aspect of it. There was a replacement, and she replaced it with a person and no background again, no resume. And I reached out to that person, and I thought that was interesting. The guy never responded. I realized he was from the LGBT community. I have nothing with gays or problems on that particular line. But the fact of the matter is, he is my representative.
Sure.
He is our representative.
Sure.
He did not respond, and she should have taken the responsibility to make sure she came to our area and shared with us our
Yeah.
concerns.
You know, I'm Bruce. I've seen too much of this. Is people when the going gets hard, they go the other way.
Yeah,
They'd rather protect the ineptness than to actually get in, roll their sleeves up,
yeah,
and dig
yeah,
around and
yeah,
do it right. So
exactly.
that's what I've seen.
Yeah,
unfortunately. So
Well, that's why I have you here, because the whole
yeah,
idea is about change,
yeah,
and I know there's none of the residents are feeling that same situation and are anxious to even get involved. And like you, I mean, I'm concerned about my wife. At one point in time, she was able to walk to the store. She could drive to Safeway, as you know. Then when Safeway closed up. There was a lot of harassment thing, a lot of homeless aspect, and just a heavy situation. It just tears you up. So I'm looking for change, and I'm
yeah,
looking to work with change, and hopefully, I think get people motivated enough, if you will, to get involved.
yeah. Well, it's not easy, but it can be done,
It
right?
can be
So
done, and it
yeah,
will be done.
yeah.
You know, I'm looking for Christine to admit, but if anything short of not taking her platform and making that the focus of what we're going to do, that's where it's going to happen.
Well, one of the things, I was thinking about this is, I saw a recent ad. I think former President Barack Obama
Yeah.
was talking about being a friend of Tina's, and I was thinking to myself, well, shouldn't she have that kind of regard for the people that she represents? And not to only
Right, right,
focus on her, but
right,
obviously she's a key
right,
leader in this race,
right.
and it's just so concerning to see those disconnects
Right,
like
right.
you mentioned.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. And and yeah, I saw that same ad with reference to former President Obama aspect of it, but my reaction was that I think it was political.
yeah,
It was kind of like an LBGT
sure,
promotion, and just being right up front with it. And if he's going to be doing it that way, he should be talking about a holistic approach. And if he's going to respond to the assimilation of all of our people aspect
sure,
of it,
sure.
not just one
Yeah, I
particular
don't know.
group.
Personally, I don't know why that is so key and such an issue.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe
Well, yeah, there are
mm,
groups. Everybody's still trying to get to the table, so to speak,
sure,
and some say the majority community tends to be basically are the one that basically signs off and this, that, and the other. But that's America. We live in in all due respect, we live in a capitalist society. We are a melting pot. All of those things goes with it. But as time goes, we come out okay. You got my point?
sure.
So we're still going to be here.
Yeah,
Being a former Marine, I've been all over the country, all over the world for that matter. And hey, the USA is still here, baby. It's still here. In fact, I'm like Don King. I bring out my little flag.
oh, Don King.
Remember Don
Yeah,
King?
oh yeah.
He's always been the old flag routine. Well, here I am. Here I am, folks. In all seriousness, and we'll make out. We'll be okay. We'll be okay. Well, look, my friend, this has been great, and thank you very, very
Thank you
much,
for the
man.
invite,
Appreciate it. And
Bruce.
tell the wife to say
Appreciate
hello,
it. I will do that.
and tell her we thank her for allowing you to
I
be here,
will.
right?
I will.
Okay.
She was happy to have me gone, so
Sounds good.
that's good.
Okay. Hey, look, folks. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a short break. I think we're about ready. We're going to give you sort of throw a little break, and then we're going to come back with Easy.
Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Well, by George, look at the half. Hey, we thought we was going to do this thing right in the middle, but guess what? We took a break, and this is community television, folks. But hey, here we are with my second guest right now, Diana. Diana, and it's Carrillo.
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 Hmm.
Carrillo. Tu
You got
connais
it.
causer un petit peu? That's
What?
Creole. That's on my end.
Oh. I was like, I hear French in there. I just didn't follow.
Well, welcome, Diana.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate that very much, and we want to thank George for allowing you to be a part of be the guest in that particular seat at this point in time. As you know, we got 3 women running for governor.
Mm-hmm.
This is the women's time, if you will. I mean, you guys are running everything, okay? You're running everything. I didn't say guys, you know what I'm saying, but you're part of the group now, okay? Okay. So the whole idea is that we want to make sure we got your response in regards to this whole era that we're dealing with at this point in time. Okay, got you?
Okay.
And I'm sure you can deal with it. So why don't we just start that way? Get a little background on yourself. You want to chat a little bit about yourself and
Yeah.
the kids and and all this other stuff. How you make that guy?
So, I have always been an advocate for and I'm gonna be very inclusive right now.
Okay.
Latino, Latina, Latinx, Hispanic community.
There you go. There you go. Okay.
And so I have my background is a state leader in state, being a state employee,
Okay.
working with child welfare,
Oh,
working with families,
okay.
and also being a leader for all of the employees that are part of what used to be called the Hispanic Network, which is now Mi Gente,
Okay.
within the Oregon Department of Human Services.
Mm-hmm.
And so that, being that George and I were both leaders
Yeah.
within our community, that's how we met.
Okay.
But that's always been, I've always tried to advocate for those whose individuals whose voices are often go unheard or are just repeatedly ignored.
Well, you know, it's important. I'm glad you brought that up the way you did that. That's because in all due respect, there was this big effort about the minorities across the board.
Hmm.
You know, blacks basically started it,
Hmm.
and then and then the other majority, was the Latina community,
Hmm.
and then they brought Asian, they brought all kinds of, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera,
Hmm.
and everyone is vying, if you will, through the assimilating to the country with the rest of the whole, which is the majority has always been identified as white,
Hmm.
even though they had various cultures,
Hmm.
but the idea they were white.
Hmm.
And so consequently, they pretty well either did the check off as to who does what, whatever.
Hmm.
And so the rest of it just gets to be everybody's just fighting, if you will, to get to that point. And
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Well, and I think that's the trap
Okay, good. Good.
because
Good. What do you mean?
this
Talk about it. Talk about it. Talk about it, Diana. I
so
like it.
this country,
Hmm.
race was really just another word that was created that really means power.
Hmm.
Who has power? How much power? And that, that's access to opportunities, resources, your level of humanity. And the trap is always been divide and conquer.
Yep.
Keep our communities separated, and we really, when it comes to race, the way the hierarchy, right? White is up here because that's the way that it was established, and everybody else is movable as they are serviceable to the white establishment.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, this idea of our communities constantly being in, like, fighting for a piece of the pie, that's the trap.
Yeah.
And so, um, and that's, I mean, any kind of divisive language,
Hmm.
um, you always have to ask yourself, like, what is behind this and who is behind this. And I mean, the more you keep people fighting at each other and going into, who has it worse, almost like in the Olympics, right? Who
Hmm.
has it
Yeah,
worse?
exactly.
You fail to see the bigger picture. And that's something that, I mean, at the end of the day, we have to remember everyone struggles. Everyone is going to have their good days, their bad days.
Hmm.
Everyone has a different amount of power.
Hmm.
And the only way to move forward is to lift each other.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I'm liking it. I'm liking it even better because even though you think about this particular time, there was a lot
Hmm.
of effort made and a lot of media, if you will, on the
Hmm.
whole issue of illegals, right? And naturally, when one says illegal, they automatically identify Latino. And whenever they talk about gangs, it's always blacks. I'm
Hmm.
saying, but you have to fight through it. And I say that to say that both of those entities are basically a very, let's put it this way, hardworking, hardworking type routine,
Hmm.
and still staying focused, if you
Hmm.
will, and that's the uniqueness about the Latinos today. You got my point,
Hmm.
because that's the future of people like yourselves,
Hmm.
yourself, and then the idea is that the solution to the so-called the illegals and whatever is right here, because those are the folks that are going to be bringing them in, and making them citizens just like anybody else. Got me?
Hmm.
And because even from the standpoint of my blackness, my so-called African American aspect of it, uh, I had to go through that same process aspect of it. And now, even here within the city of Portland, we used to have a District 18 that I fought hard for,
Hmm.
to basically get an address. Every citizen who was a majority have an address. Different districts, they got something in the front of their name. We didn't have that. Okay, so all of a sudden, that's why I pushed that 18 piece. It wasn't a black community. It was just a community where a number of the residents were African American. You got me? And so now, since they've tried, so then there was this big rush to get rid of it. You got me? But guess what? The Latinos are here. And I like the idea that they're up front now to a certain degree. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I mean, look at the number of Latinos that are running for office. I mean, I'm excited about that whole piece. The fact that they're there, they're working it routine. So boom, the assimilation is happening. You got me? And I think that's, what do you think about something like that?
You know, I think words are important, just like the term illegal. It's dehumanizing.
Yes, yes,
And,
it is.
you know, undocumented, it would be a better
Yes.
term. And when I think of, you know, I understand what you mean by the word, like assimilate and assimilation. And it's really working the system. We're not working the system to get a benefit out of it, but learning how the rules really work, and being able to navigate that in order to, you know, bring progress and lift, you know, all the communities up.
Yes, yes. Not the divide and conquer thing.
Not the divide and
Yeah,
conquer
not the
thing.
divide and conquer. That's why I say George and I we're gonna have some fun, and you, by the way, because you're gonna handle the women's side, okay, the women's side. Right? So we'll handle this other side aspect of it. But I think it's exciting. It's exciting for this country too, because as you know, we got ills all over the world for that matter. And without these USA, guess what? We don't. This melting pot's not gonna I mean, there's not going to be a kind of any directions made. We're the lead. We're the leading force, if you will, in many ways. This country is, so to speak. But the key is that allow us to all exist, if you will, and bring it. You know, so we've got directions. You know, I mean, I'm going around the door, but you hear where I'm kind of coming from. Okay, got me.
Yeah.
Now tell me about the politics. What do you think about that? That's this other big issue. You got to remind. But that means, like I said, George and I, we you know, it's a woman's issue, not a male issue, right? Aspect of this whole issue with the abortion aspect of it, aspect of it. And I'll just be just upfront on my end if there was anything happening about that piece. And I'm Catholic, and you know I was born in Zapria in Louisiana, routine kind of deal, and so we were just basically more family and whatever. And the male knew what they had to do. They had to go out there and get to work and bring in the whatever, and then mom takes over and all that good stuff. What do you think about this whole issue with the abortion issue? How do you feel about that?
You know, I think it's a wonderful fear tactic, and it was used very, very well, because abortion and reproductive rights have been a right in the state since 1983, 10 years after Roe v. Wade, and it was codified in our Constitution in 2017. So the only way to overturn that, and the only threat that there really is for reproductive rights and specifically abortion access, is if, and this is voter-led, you know, our citizens have to come forward and say, we don't agree with this, we don't want it to be protected, we don't want our Medicaid, our and private insurance to cover this anymore, and majority would have, you know, it would have to go into an election cycle, and that's the only way to overturn it. And so that isn't, you look at polls, anywhere between 65 to the low 80s percentages of Oregonians think reproductive rights it's a human right. It should stay. Folks should have abortion access. And so, I mean, a lot of the ads that we're seeing are, you know, oh, be careful. Betsy Johnson and Christine Drazen don't support this, or, you know, Christine Drazen wants to get rid of women's rights. And I mean, aside from that just not being true and not being a possibility, it really speaks to just the unfortunate thing that happens with elections. Is it paints people in a very negative light, and it scares voters into, it really scares them to vote a certain way or to think a certain way, and it doesn't give opportunity for people to really become informed. It's not, you're not sharing anything new, it's not information, it's just, be scared of this person. vote this way. And something, and so for, myself, I voted for Christine Drazan. And one thing that I heard in the way that she talks, she is part of the Republican Party. She has her personal beliefs on abortion, just like everybody does. However, she's not letting her personal beliefs dictate what she's going to do for all of Oregon. She says, no, this is my personal belief. However, that doesn't matter. Oregonians and what they think, what they need and what they care about, that's what matters. And she has said, I'm not going to change this. I can't change this. I'm going to protect it. And we have one of the most progressive, it's the best way that I can term it, abortion access. So you can get an abortion up until like the very moment of giving birth. And the only thing that she has said is, I'm not going to get more progressive than that. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, it's just really unfortunate how scared some people have become. And it's really taken that fear and that emotional reaction. It really takes the ability for your brain to move past that and just do your own research. It really hinders that process. Yeah.
In that note, the only thing I would remark in regards to what a woman should be thinking about, aspect of it is that it's going to be up to a female to deal with the issue if, in fact, they go through an abortion. It's their right, but my point is that it's family too. Got my point? And they have to think about it. Every individual has to think about it. As far as I'm concerned, if you get an abortion, boom. But at some point in time, the Lord might say, "What about kids?" You may want their kids. I mean, that's where I'm thinking along that line because we're all pro-life. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Right? Am I right?
And I think, and
Yes.
I'm going to butcher this because, so part of my personal background
Yes.
is religious studies. I studied religious studies. And something that gets and we see this a lot with Christianity specifically. A lot of terms, or not terms, a lot of verses and a lot of scripture gets twisted and gets this new meaning, and it gets used as an explanation for a person's belief, whether or not it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
And so, and it's a lot of, when it comes to people that are pro-life and, they say, well, God says, murder is bad. It's like, yes, but in the Bible, it also says, if you are able to bring your neighbor closer together to the faith, then that is more godlike than it is to push someone away. And so when, and there's a story, and I, of course, now that cameras are on, and I can't remember the specifics,
Go on. Yeah.
but
Whatever you want to say.
when you think about if you have a woman that's going through, whether it's a wanted, unwanted pregnancy, well, unwanted in this case, and she says, you know what, I'm going to get an abortion. What's going to bring her closer to God? Shunning her and making her feel bad for whatever her situation or circumstances are? Or saying, we can't physically support you, we can't physically support, that unborn child, but, God forgives, and, we're here and you have a community. So there's those two, or there's that rhetoric that often gets overlooked, and it's, people will spit out verses and be like, well, this is why you shouldn't do that, this is why it's bad. And then we forget, people are human. Life happens, and it happens very differently for each and one of us.
Yes, it does.
And so those are just some of my thoughts.
Yeah, it does change as time goes.
Yes.
I've had my era. You have your era, and you've got the folks behind you. The kids they're going to have their time. That's right. And things tend to change. Especially with the visuals and stuff, and how the family gets made up today. Got me compared to when I was living at my age. But this has been great. Any other points you want to make from a woman's viewpoint?
Um,
Family?
it's so I have two stepsons.
Yeah. Okay.
And now that I went from just being a woman to now being in a motherly role, and breaking some of the cycles of what I grew up in parenting, right? It's really been interesting just being their stepmom
Yes.
because, and especially throughout these last couple years,
Yes.
it's so much easier to be kind and to give people benefit of the doubt and to just be loving, than to put in this so much effort into spreading hate or making someone feel bad for who they are, or and so at the end of the day, I mean, I really just want to encourage folks to remember to be kind, to really try to have some empathy and compassion for
Okay.
each other. And right now, during election season, it feels like, if you have someone who's a Democrat and someone who's a
Yeah.
Republican, they're enemies. No,
Yeah.
like this time is gonna pass. It
Yeah,
comes and
that's
goes.
right. Oh yeah, for sure.
It comes and
That's
goes.
right.
Relationships come and go, but they don't have to for something minor. You just have to remember to be a genuine, caring human sometimes, and that really makes a difference.
Good enough. Hey, on that note, that sounds good. That's a good close. I like that. Really good. Well, hey, thank you very, very much. This has
Thank
been
you,
really good.
Bruce.
And I'm sure that the viewing audience really appreciate your comments because we need it now.
Hmm.
And all they have to do is just pick up this pamphlet now, right? And
Yes.
check it out the deal.
Yes. Vote, vote, vote.
Vote.
If you don't vote, if you don't,
That's right. That's right.
speak up for
That's
yourself, somebody else will.
That's right.
And somebody else might not be as kind as you are.
That's right.
So please.
And again, whoever gets the deal, that we have to work with it, right? Whoever sits in those seats, and for those folks who you see sitting in those seats, trust me, that's a job. That's a job. So all the platforms of the individuals who didn't win are also part of that seat because they're going to have to relate to that because those people are not going to forget, right? Got me? So please vote, like Diana said. Please vote. Okay, I guess we're going to go on and get this break here. Steve, if you're ready, just go on and do what you have to do. Easy's going to come and close it out with a song, and then from that point on, we're gonna say goodbye. Okay. All right.
This is the highest volume.
Take my love from me. I'll give you everything you want and need. Take my love from me. I'll give you everything you want and need. Baby, your love's so beautiful, and your soul revives it all to me endlessly. I can't stop looking in your eyes, the way you hold me tight to me endlessly. Take my love from me. I'll give you everything you want and need. Take my love from me. I'll give you everything you want and need. I want your love. I'll give you all of me. Connection, so deep connection. A fire, soul satisfaction. I want your love. I'll give you all of me. Connection, so deep connection. A fire, soul satisfaction. Take my love from me. I'll give you everything you want and need. Take my love from me. I'll give you everything you want and need.
Baby, let me answer.
so no. Me, I no go let you go. You tell inside my heart I'm so loyal. Shana cause I never blow. Baby, I will pray for you, oh my God. And I go to beg for you, no be first. Say I go to give you the round of applause. And I go to cry for you, yeah. Pull up on me, with your booty, pull up on me. Bad girl, pull up on me, with your booty, pull up on me. Yeah, yeah. That downtown party. I wish should be close. I wish should be close. I don't want nobody. Take my love from me. I'll give you everything you want and need. Baby, will you take my love? Take my love from me. I'll give you everything you want and need. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Okay, good, folks. Come on, George. Let's get over here. We get over here. I'll get over here. George, you're right there. Hey, guess what? We're going to be closing it. Now, as you can see, we gave you something to think about, but in all due respect, get out and vote. Get out and vote. It's very, very important. You got your voters pamphlets and you got your ballots, whatever. What do you think, George?
I think so too. I think.
What about your community? Can you say something to them for a minute?
Necesitamos votar, necesitamos participar en el proceso.
Okay, it's going to be very, very important. What about you guys? You guys going to vote this time around?
Yes.
For sure?
Yes.
From Hawaii, all the way from Hawaii?
All the way.
You going to bring some folks from South Africa?
I'm from Nigeria.
You from Nigeria?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's kind of good. That's kind of an interesting aspect of it. See, I understand you're going to be probably doing an event. If they want to know a little bit more about your particular group, you got a website or anything?
Oh yeah, you can find me Easy Baba Melo, IZZY BABAMELO. I'm an Afrobeat artist, originally from Nigeria, but I'm based here in Portland, Oregon.
Sounds good.
And I'm here to stay.
Let's put that address. Put that address one more time.
It's IZZY BABAMELO. Easy Baba Melo.
All right.
You can find me everywhere.
How about you say? What do you do? What do you do?
I'm Lonnie K, and I'm an R&B pop hip hop artist. And I'm originally from Hawaii, but I now reside in Portland and also here to stay.
Oh, really? Oh, awesome. How about that? We're going to have them on the show more often. What do you think, then, George?
Absolutely.
That'd be a good deal?
Yes.
And what about you, George? You got anything else going?
Nope, not right now. I'm going to be hosting the next show, but I definitely want to make a shout out to all of the community of color that we got to participate, we got to vote. We have to show up. November 8th is the last day. It's going to be our election time. We have to participate.
And George, I want to thank you personally. It was the last minute, but I want to thank you personally for being able to working with the Christina aspect of it and getting there to the Portland area, getting there on ground, and being over there on the island, so you can kind of see what the issues that we're having. Okay?
Absolutely.
Appreciate that very much.
No problem.
Okay, shout out to you on that. Okay, sounds good.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bruce.
Good. Thank you very much, folks. See you next week, or better yet, you'll be seeing George on the show this next time around. Okay, have a go.
Good job, guys.
Good show. How about that?